Yes, hello, my name is Vibeke Bischoff. I'm from the Viking Ship Museum in Roskilde, and I have specialized in reconstruction of archaeological ship finds. My background is that I have been working as a boat builder, and I'm also sailing with these ships. This picture shows 5 full-scale reconstructed Viking ships from the Viking Ship Museum in Roskilde. They belong to the late Viking Age, so they are at the peak of the ship's technology of the Vikings. The Viking had a massive urge to travel and explore the world. This tells us not only about expansion, trading, statehood, adventureness, curiosity, but it also tells us that the Vikings were able to. And this in fact tells us about seaworthiness of these ships. The Vikings also used small boats in big scale, but these were most for fishing and local trading. So I will focus mainly on the bigger ships from the Viking Age, since the bigger ships has more advanced construction and it also have more powerful propulsion like oars and sail. So we can learn more from the big ships. I have some examples of ships preserved from the Viking Age. There are many of them, but I have picked some of the best preserved ships in order to give you an overview of the variety of ship finds from that period. We have the Oseberg Ship from early Viking Age, 820, and the Kõneleb ship from 895. They are Norwegian ship finds and very well preserved, like you can see. They are exhibited in Oslo in Norway. Below, from 900, we have the Vibeke ship find. It's only an imprint in the ground with the nails preserved. It's a Danish ship find. Then we have a small expanded lockboat, the tuna boat, from 850, and the Eskeskjær boat, which is a merchant ship from 900. They are Swedish. And then we have the Hedeby ship that is a 30-meter long, very, very narrow warship from Hedeby, now Germany, former Danish. And then we have the Kloster ship from 919, a merchant ship, a cargo ship, an ocean-going cargo ship. Then we have Roskilde 6, a very long, the world's longest warship. And then in the bottom we have the 5 ships from Kõneleb from 1030 to 40. I will start with the Kõneleb ships. These Kõneleb ships are exhibited in the Viking Ship Museum in Roskilde. They are 5 different ships. There are 2 merchant ships, 1 big and 1 small, and there are 3 merchant ships, 1 big and 2 small, and there are 2 warships, 1 big and 1 small. They were sunk in order to make a barrier in a narrow place in the fjord in order to prevent foreign troops to reach Roskilde. That was the main city at that time where the king lives. The Kõneleb ship are exhibited at the Viking Ship Museum in Roskilde. This museum was built in 69, and it was built to exhibit the Kõneleb ships. The museum is today Denmark's museum for ships and seafaring and boat building from ancient to medieval times. We focus, of course, on the Viking period. We have also a museum harbor where we have a large collection of Nordic traditional boats that are lying in the harbor together with our full-scale reconstruction of the Viking ships. All the 5 Viking ships from Skuldelev have been reconstructed in full scale using original materials and original tools and methods. This has kept our research alive because new questions pop up all the time when you research, when you reconstruct in praxis. Solutions have to be realistic and correct, or it will break during use. We reconstruct in full scale to learn more about these ships. I'll give you a short talk about the specific ships of the Skuldelev find. And Skuldelev 3 is a 40-meter long Danish cargo ship meant or built for coastal trading. It's built in 1030. The ship is built from oak, and the origin of the wood is from Denmark, and is dated to after 1033, probably 1030. And it's dated from annual rings, as a wooden annual rings. They cut a slice in the tree, and then they can see the growth system. And from knowing wood from before, they make a curve, and then they have a piece of a plank, and they can see the O-ring, how it growed, and then they can find out in which year this tree had grown. So if they are so lucky that they have the last O-ring with sapwood, then they are able to say exactly when the tree for this ship was felled. In this case, some O-rings were missing and were estimated to be around 5 to 7 years, so this is why we say this ship is from 1030. The ship was reconstructed on the basis of the excavation drawings, and there was made a cardboard reconstruction model, this one up in the right corner. And on the basis of this, a wooden scale model in 1 to 10 was built as a pre-study before the building in full scale. And it was built in full scale in 1982 to 84 by a group of volunteers. I was one of them, and it was built of oak, and it was built with hand tools. It wasn't replica tools, it wasn't reconstruction of Viking tools. Only one axe we had for fun, that was reconstruction, but it was hand tool axes and chisels and drills and so on. We were amateurs when we were building the ship, and 5 of us are still working at the museum, and it's 30 years ago now. This group that built the ship also sails the ship. So we have formed a boat guild to sail this ship, and this is how all the ships are sailed at the museum, by volunteers who have made a sailing group that take care of the ship, paint it in the spring and sail it in the summer and take care of it all winter. The ship has a draft of 75 centimeters, so it's very shallow. It was tested for many years in order to learn how to handle the ship, and of course also to see the performance of the ship. It mostly have sailed around Denmark inshore, but it also sailed to Gotland and to Poland, to Volin, in order to make a voyage in the wake of the Vikings. The next ship is Skuldelev 5. It's a small warship. It's 7 meters long and has a crew of 32. It was reconstructed 4 years after we launched the first one, the Roe, and is reconstructed on the basis of the excavation drawings and built in a wooden model, and was built and launched in 90 to 91. It was there was 5 people working on the ship. They were hired, we were paid, we were now professionals, boat builder. 3 of us had built the first School of 3, Roe, so we continued with the experience we had from the former project. It's a long and slender warship, and it has a shield rack along the shear straight for the shields, and it's built for both sails and oars. It has a draft of only half a meter, so it's able to sail up the shore. This reconstruction are painted. You can see on the bottom picture that it's painted yellow and red. And this is because we found traces of wood carving on the planks of the ship. So we interpreted as the ship had been painted. We don't know if the original was painted, but we know from description in the Nordic sagas that they sometimes painted the ships. We can also see that on other pictures from the Viking Age describing the ships. Skuld 5 is built mainly of oak, but also have planks of pine and alder. And due to this, it was regarded as being a poor man's ship. I'm not sure it was very used when it was sunk, but I think it was on purpose that they used these different wood species, because the wood species have very different characters. I won't come more into this, but I do not think it's a poor man's ship, but it's very, very used and very repaired. The origin of the wood is Danish, western part of Denmark, and is dated to after 1024, probably 1030 to 40. Yeah, the ship has 32 oar holes, so it can take a crew of like 35 men. It has a sail of 45 square meters, and the maximum speed is 13 to 15 knots. The crew says they have sailed 15 knots, but they didn't measure it, so I'm playing safe here. But it's a fast-going ship because it's so shallow, with such a huge sail. And with a large crew, then you can carry a larger sail. This ship find has sailed in Danish waters and in along the Swedish coast. And this summer it visited the Faroe Islands. It didn't sail to the Faroe Islands, but it was shipped to the Faroe Islands and have been sailing up there. Skuld 6 is a small Norwegian fishing, transport, cargo ship from 1030. It's built of pine, is from the western part of Norway, dated to after 1027, shortly after, so we say it's from 1030 also. It's mostly built of pine, but they also use birch for the keelson, which is a very stupid choice because birch will rot when it gets wet, but it lasted for the ship's period. So some few futtock made of alder. The ship was reconstructed in a reconstruction model of cardboard. We always reconstruct all the ship finds on the basis of the excavation drawing. All parts were drawn in 1:1, and then we were able to scale them down in 1:10 and make a puzzle and build up the boat in 3 dimensions. That makes a very trustworthy shape of the hull. Before building in full scale, it was also built in a wooden model. Kraka fyr. Fyr means pine, so Kraka fyr was built in 97 to 98 It's built of pine and rigged with a linen sail. The first one you saw, Roe, was rigged with a woolen, hand-woven woolen sail. Handmade thread and handmade sail. It has a draft of 40 centimeters, 10 oars. It can also be sailed by 4 people, but 4 to 10, and it has had a maximum speed of 10 knots. And that I know for sure because I was sailing that day. We have another variation of the same ship find, because as you can see, the stem and stern are not preserved. So the stem are an interpretation, and this one has been made on the basis of a Norwegian bog find of a stem that was lying in the bog. It makes a different, not a different hull form, but a different appearance of the ship. This ship has, it was launched in 2012 and has been sailing in Danish and Swedish waters, but at the moment it's sailing down the west coast of Greenland in order to make focus on the the Viking settlement in Greenland and transportation along the coast in the Viking Age. Then we have number Kõneleb 1. That's a large cargo ship. It's an ocean-going cargo ship, 60 meter long, and originally built in Western Norway in 1030. This ship was also reconstructed in a 1:10 reconstruction model in cardboard in order to find the hull form, and also built in a wooden model. The origin of the wood is Western Norway, and is dated to not much after 1025. It's built of pine, and you can see some brown spots there as well. That's oak. Not originally built with oak, it's repaired with oak 10 or 20 years later. It was built on the museum boatyard in 1998 to 2000. And the knar is rigged with a hand-woven woolen sail of 90 square meters. It was quite a job and took over a year to make this sail. The ship has a draft of 1.2 meters and has a cargo capacity of 20 tons. On a normal condition, it sails with 16 tons of ballast, and the hull itself weighs 6 to 7 tons. So it can carry quite a good deal of goods. And we think of the ship like being, of course it has sailed along the Norwegian coast, but it has also been trading in the Baltic, most likely. It has 90 square meters of sail and has a top speed of 10 knots. And that's enough, says the crew. They like more, 8 knots. I have a small film where Otter is sailing, and I think this film explains, it explains a lot, so I will keep quiet and you can watch the film. It's 5 minutes.
Sæt sejl! Sejl skal rejses, det gør vi med det her spil. Det ligger i vandret. Det er i virkeligheden bare en træstamme med nogle huller i, som sidder fast i nogle led. Og så med de 2 lange pinde, som det kaldes spære, der kan man så dreje den her træstamme.
Can you read the text?
Så virkelig det tår i noget fald, som vi har sejlet. Når så først sejlet op, så går det derudad. Også er en kopi af et vikingskib fra den første halvdel af 1000-tallet. Originalskibet er bygget i Sognefjorden i Norge og blev fundet som vrag i Roskildefjorden. Og så udgravet sammen med de andre skibe, der udstillet i museet. Ud fra det vrag, man fandt i fjorden, har man kunnet rekonstruere, hvordan skibet har set ud. Og man har også kunnet se på arbejdsspor fra værktøjet, hvordan det blev bygget. I 2000 der byggede museet en kopi af det her skib. Og så er jo virkelig et fragtskib. Det svarer til, at det er vores moderne lastvogne. Vi kan have 20 ton last ombord. Men vi snyder lidt, der er ikke tønder med saltet sild, man har bare ballast. Det fylder heller ikke så meget. sideror. Den sidder fast ude på siden, selvfølgelig i styrbord siden hvor man styrer fra. Det bliver holdt fast ind til skibssiden med det, der hedder en vidje. Det er i virkeligheden en lille birketræ, man vrider på en bestemt måde, så fibrene løsner sig. Så stikker roden fra birketræet ud på siden af roret og holder den fast ind mod skibssiden. Inde i selve skibet, der er vidjen så bundet fast. Med sådan et skib kan man godt krydse mod vinden. Det går selvfølgelig ikke helt så hurtigt som moderne kapsejladsbåde, men det er måske også ligesom at sammenligne en sportsvogn med en lastvogn. Selve sejlet, det er lavet i uld. Sejlet blev ikke fundet sammen med vraget i fjorden, men det er en kopi af andre sejl, man har fundet stykker af. Når man så skal vende skibet, så skal man dreje skibet og sejlet, så man får vinden fra den anden side. Her er det halsen. Det er det forreste hjørne af sejlet, der er gjort fast ude i skibet, ude foran. Når man vender, skal man have løsnet halsen og trukket den ned bagved og have gjort den til skødet. Og skødet, der var bag, bliver trukket op foran i skibet og gjort fast som hals. En tværliggende pind, der sidder ude foran, som hedder en dejlås eller dejchas. Den skal drejes rundt, så den er klar til at modtage halsen på den anden side, når man har drejet sejlet og skibet. Sejlet bliver drejet, og halsen bliver sat fast i den nye side. Man har nu vinden ind fra den anden side af skibet. Når halsen er gjort fast, så fintrimmer man resten af tråværket, så sejlet står helt rigtigt til den kurs, man nu skal sejle. Vi plejer at sige, at også her sejler 4-5 knop, når vi sejler, men det kræver, at der er lidt vind. Vi har også haft den helt op på 11 knop. Det var dog ikke særlig sjovt, fordi det var lidt for meget. Her er sideroret igen med stumpen fra vedjen, der holder den fast ind til skibssiden. Man skal forestille sig, at den klump, der sidder på ydersiden, går hele vejen ind gennem skibsgården og gør fast derinde. Toppen af roret har man så en rorpind i, hvor rorgængeren har fat og kan styre skibet.
Vær til sidst, klar til stavvending. Gå ind i stokket.
Man kan også vende skibet. Det hedder en stavvending, hvor man drejer op imod vinden. Derved stopper man faktisk skibet, fordi man får vind ind på den fejle side af sejlet, og man ligger næsten stille. Og sejlet ser ud som om det får vind på den forkerte side. I mellemtiden så fører man rundt på vejlåsen, og man får hævet skødet frem, så man er klar til at sætte det som hals i den nye side. Når alt tovværket er gjort klar til, at man kan vende, og man samtidig har fået drejet skibet rundt. Jeg tænker på det 30 træk er langsomt til at vende sig. Så når man er klar med det hele, så kan man i et snuptag vende sejlet rundt og få sat halsen der vender. Når halsen er gjort fast, kan resten af tovværket trimmes til, så man kan sejle på den nye kurs. Alt tovværket er lavet i naturfibre, ligesom man har fra arkeologiske fund, hvad man ved, de har haft i vikingetiden. Det vil sige fibre fra stænglerne på hampeplanten, det kan være fra inderbarken, altså bast fra lindetræerne, eller det kan være fra hestehår fra halerne på hesten. Alt det kan spændes til gavn, så skal man bruge til at lave tovværket. De træblokke, som vi også bruger til at håndtere sejlet med, de er kopier af det samtidige fund fra andre arkeologiske steder. Efter en hel dag med god sejlads, hvor vi krydsede af fjorden, er vi nu på vej ind igen mod Hundested. Denne gang med vinden i ryggen. Meget behagelig sejlads på denne skibstype. Fin fart.
Yeah, the last of the 5 Skuldelev ships to be reconstructed was Skuldelev number 2. As you can see in the picture, it's not very well preserved. It's only 25% preserved, while the other 4 ships were very much better preserved. But these 25% preserved is a frame of the boat that are preserved. All the foretocks, or the internal ribs of the ship, was preserved in the full length of the ship. So the shape of the bottom was able to be reconstructed. And since it's the bottom of the sail that are below water and says much about the sailing performance, Then we dared, after building 4 other Viking ships, we dared build this one also, because we thought now we have experience enough to start building a 30-meter long warship from the Viking Age. It's built of oak, and it's dated to the summer season 1042, and the wood's origin is the Dublin area in Ireland. And since the dendrochronologists are able to say summer 1042 is because that they have the outermost O-ring that was not quite intact, meaning that it was also only the summer O-ring they had and not the autumn O-ring or winter O-ring. The ship was reconstructed using the original parts, meaning all the foretocks. These are the foretocks. And the stem was preserved, and some of the planks, enough to tell that the ship was looking almost like this, most likely. It has a draft of just below 1 meter, 95 centimeters, and it's manned by a crew of 65 persons. It has a sail of 112 square meters and 60 oars, and its maximum speed has been 13 knots, but we believe that it can sail 15 knots. We want to believe that. But when we have sailed it, we have had a lot of gear on board, and we have been sailing safe. It was built in 2000 and launched in 2004. It has sailed several times around in Denmark, but also to Norway and to Ireland. And the talk after me by Carsten Hvid, he will tell about the sailing to Ireland. The last bit of my talk, I will talk about reconstruction, building these full-scale reconstructions, how we do it. And before I'll do that, I'll show you a short animation. It's only 2.5 minutes, but then you will get an overview of this construction of a Viking Age longship clinker build. The construction is a keel and stem first, and then the bottom plank in a shell first construction. When the bottom is finished, all the floor timbers are fitted and fixed to the hull with wooden tree nails. And the keelson and the keelson locked are laid in place. The planks, together with the thin middle frames that combine the bottom and the sides, are then attached. The long stringer that strengthens the hull and support the beatty layer are laid in, together with the beaties and their knees and their supports. The next stringer that holds the top end of all the beatty knees are laid in together with the beam layer, beam knees and all the supports. Then the rest of the planking, 2 more stringers and strong foretocks are attached and the hull is finished. Finally, the mast and mast support are laid in. The rudder frame and rudder are attached. And to keep the 60 crew members entertained, the oars are put in as well. Very easy. When we reconstruct in full scale, all the ships are built with original methods and original tools. The planks are chopped out with axes. They are cleaved out of tree trunks with the wooden wedges, and I have a small film showing that too. Yeah. The planks are cleft out and chopped with axes to get the right flexibility. How flexible the plank is. And all these iron nails, they are made of blacksmith by hand. And the iron is a special soft iron with low content of carbon, based on analysis of Viking Age iron from the ships. All the inner construction are made of crooked timber that are natural grown, so the grain follows each element, the shape of each element, so it's very strong. The tools are all now at the museum reconstructed from Viking Age finds and chosen from tool marks on the wood. So we can see if there was used a broad axe or a narrow axe or one with a tight angle on the edge or wood. The ships are preserved with wooden tar to preserve the ship from rotting and from drying. And the wooden tar is made in Finland, like you see on the pictures. The ropes on the Viking ship reconstructions, there we use hemp, but we also use line-bast rope. That was, we think, the most common rope used in the Viking Age. They also used hide from walrus or seal and horsehair. The withes that connects the rudder or attach the rudder to the ship is made from birch or oak or hazel or other young trees, where the crew goes out in the wood and find a young tree and twist it like you see on the picture. The sails were either made of wool or linen. It might also be made of nettle, but we haven't found any traces of it. We haven't found any traces of linen sail either, because linen rot very easily. But we have found in Scandinavia traces of making or harvesting flax. And you can find somewhere they have found the archaeologists, they have found some wells where they had flax down in this well, ready for make thread for linen cloth. Wool sail or woolen fragment from sail in the ships have been found. There have never been found a full sail from the Viking Age, but we know from the Nordic sagas that wool was used and they were woven in long lanes for the sails. In southern Scandinavia or British area, then linen was mentioned in the written sources from 1200 describing the Viking Age. So maybe linen was more common in the southern part of Scandinavia, but wool was certainly most common in the North Atlantic area, where we had sheep for other purposes also. So at the Viking Ship Museum we have reconstructed many of our sails with hand-woven woolen sails, and they are very efficient. They're actually more efficient than the linen sails, because you can treat them with fat or tallow from ox and sheep, and when you treat the surface with this fat mixed with maybe ochre, then it's very wind-tight and waterproof. And the wool is very flexible and forms very nicely in the wind. So the ship performs better with a woolen sail than with a linen sail. Woolen sail were used in North Atlantic area up until the 1800s, so it was quite common. The Vikings were very proud of their ships, and both written sources and the archaeological ship find confirm this. You can see on this is a Bayeux tapestry made, woven in 11th century, describing the Scandinavian ships with its longship, its warship with colored sails and colored ship sides. When you study the Bayeux tapestry also, the horses are colored, But we think anyway that this shows correct ships, because we also seen it on church, painting in church, and we read about it in the Nordic sagas about painted ships and painted sails. The ships also had dragon heads, some of them. It's not an illusion. We see them, the left picture is from a Norwegian ship find, and the blue head is from a Danish ship find, which I will tell more about later in my talk. We don't know if the Skuldelev ships was painted, but we have painted 2 of them. After we launched the Sea Stallion, we painted the sail red and yellow with pigments. It was ochre, red and yellow ochre, mixed in salt water. They do like that in Venice. I met a man there who made old sails where they painted these with pigments in big ornaments, and it was very durable. So we thought we would try that on the Sea Stallion sail, because the Sea Stallion sail is a linen sail. A woolen sail on 112 square meters would be way too expensive, way over our heads. So we chose a linen sail and painted it with pigments. We also painted the ship with the blue indigo color mixed in linseed oil, and yellow ochre and red ochre also mixed in linseed oil to paint the ship. We don't know if the ship was painted, but we used the Sea Stallion to tell this story, because if we came in a harbor with these reconstructions and they were all brown with grey sails, no one would wonder, because it would fit their idea of a Viking ship, rough and brown and grey and natural. But the Vikings actually were very happy for colors. So we painted this ship to tell the story. The Viking ships performed well, with high speeds, good seaworthiness, and they were able to tack and beat to windwards. This is the reason for the Viking success. The ships were able to row and sail at the same time. The 5 full-scale reconstruction, they have given us 50 years of experience, and this has also opened some opportunities for the Viking Ship Museum to be invited to work with other ship finds that do not belong to our museum. And I have a presentation with 2 ship finds, one Danish and one Norwegian, that I think will have your interest. The one is very similar to the Salme finds because only the nails were preserved, and the other is very spectacular and the earliest known ship that have carried a sail of the Viking ships. The first one is the Ladby ship. The Ladby ship is a Danish ship, and it was buried in a grave in 900 or 925. Only the nails are preserved in the ground and the imprint of the ship. I know that you have in Estonia this Salme finds where 40 or 41 warriors were buried in the ship. And here also only the nails are preserved and the imprint in the ground. The Ladby ship is 200 years older than this Salme find, but it was found in 1935, and the rivet and nails in the ground were measured in 3 dimensions, and each nail were giving a number. This information was then put in a database in the computer, and on the basis of these measures, I made a model setup with adjustable templates because the imprint was very damaged. There was a fox grave in the imprint, and there have been grave robbers, but the main shape of the ship was clear, but I knew when I started this reconstruction that I had to adjust the lines. All these nails, every single nail, there were 2,000 nails in this ship find, and the archaeologist had written down about the wooden structure in the rust around the nail. If you had a nail, it was like this thick with rust, and they would describe that it had 2.5 centimeters of vertical, like horizontal wooden lines, and 3 centimeters of vertical wooden lines. So I could interpret this nail to have gone through a plank of 2.5 centimeters in thickness, and then 3 centimeters of a frame or something the like. So it was like an detective work to find out how this ship had looked like. But the nails described the thickness of the planks, where the frames in the ship were, where the planks had been connected, because in this connection the nails were only 2.5 centimeters long. When they were attaching 2 planks to each other, they were 5 centimeters long. All the foretocks in the full length of the ship, the top ends of them were fastened to the ship with 9 centimeter long nails in 3rd and 4th strake. So by finding all this pair of spikes or long nails in the full length, I was able to reveal the framing distance of the ship, and thereby I could say how many men it could carry, because they had 2 or as a set of oar per frame is normal. Yeah, it's like that. So I could say that it had a construction like this with the frame. I could say how broad the frame was, and I could decide the mast position, because in the mast area they found 8 of these iron rings in the mid part of the ship, and they have most likely held the ropes that fastened the mast. So I don't have the exact position of the mast, but I have it within 0.5 meter. In the front of the ship, where the forestem are, 10 iron spirals were lying in the ground, and in the aft, this iron band were lying, describing maybe the tail of a dragon, and the iron spirals describing the head of the dragon. This small stone is a mold for making jewelry. It was found in Birka, Sweden, and it shows a dragon head on a ship stem with these spirals on the neck. So I used this stone to be inspired to make it for this model. When I say model, this is because I built it in a 1:10 model in order to show what the ship might have looked like. The ship is very shallow. It only it has a draft of 45 centimeters, 40 to 45 centimeters, and it's 21.5 meter long and less than 3 meter broad. So it's very long and narrow, and it's meant for coastal defense, and I'm able to sail on very, very shallow waters. And now 10 years after the reconstruction was done, 20 years after, then it's launched. It was built in Funen, and it's carrying a sail of 80 square meter. It has 32 oars, and of course we don't know the maximum speed yet because it hasn't been rigged yet. We will do that in August. But it has been a very exciting work to reconstruct this hole in the ground with a lot of nails just lying there. And then realize how much we were able to tell about this ship. The last ship I will tell about is the Oseberg Ship. The Oseberg Ship was originally built in 820 and it was excavated in 1904. It's one of the earliest found Viking ships in the north. The Kõneleb ship was found a few years before this. It's the first ship, it's the earliest known ship find that has carried a sail. The ship before this, Kvalsund ship from Norway, it's a rowing ship. The Nøvdam is a rowing ship. The Sutton Hoo is a rowing ship. This is the first ship that has carried a sail. And some ignorants have looked at this ship and says this ship has never sailed. It's so shallow and has no freeboard above water. And it was probably just built for the burial. It was put in a grave mound with 2 women inside, maybe a queen. The ship was assembled and exhibited in Oslo, and then it was measured and there was made a drawing. Oops. And a full-scale reconstruction. I don't know why. But this was a ship. This is a ship, you can see the stem. It was built in a beautiful full-scale reconstruction and launched in 87. But the ship capsizes during the very first sea trial. The crew felt it unstable and it was wagging like a goose on the top of the water. And they were a bit insecure and wanted to approach harbor and called the support ship and say we will approach harbor. But they were filming and they said, couldn't you just take one more turn? And then the ship took one more turn and capsized. It took 20 seconds and then it was gone. But everyone was rescued. But it made people wonder, how can the national symbol of Norway, the most beautiful Viking ship in the world, why did it sink? Was it built for the burial only? Was the sail too big? Was it too little ballast? Was the crew too few? Or what was wrong? Then I was invited to investigate the hull form again in 1996 because they wanted to build a full-scale reconstruction in the southern part of Norway where the ship is found. And when we investigated the inside of the ship, it was clear that even though it's very homogeneous and beautiful on the outside, you see many problems on the inside. The frames were damaged, the beams, like you see on this picture, the cross beams in the bow were cut and shortened. And in the inside you see a lot of supports. There was collapse of the frames. So all these things had to be reconstructed. So we looked through the ship for cracks and deformation and reconstructed the shape of all the internal structure, all the construction, in order to find the original hull form of this ship. And in order to do this, all the elements from the ship was cut out. The ship was scanned and you could make 2D drawings of each element in the ship. And they were assembled in a model setup. And when you're working with all the parts assembled in a model setup, then you cannot, it's a very good way of working because you cannot alter one dimension without inflicting another dimension. On a drawing table you can do anything you like, but in a model you cannot. Then you find more answers. And all the frames in the bow had been pressed in during installation, and when when making these wider, then the stem lifted. And when this reconstruction called the Queen, it sank, then it took the bow water, it took its own bow water over the sheer. So it actually didn't capsize. It wasn't an accident. It sailed itself down because it sucked. When it heeled over, it sucked itself in the water and continued down. It made its own hole, actually. When the model was finished, it was recorded digitally, and I made a solid model for the engineer in Trondheim, so they were able to make a waterproof 1-to-10 model that should be tested in a hydrodynamic laboratory. And here, there's a small film, it's very short, but it shows the bow water, how the hull form presses the bow water out, and the bow lifts when the ship gains speed, like you see now. So this ship will sail, it will perform better. It does not take the water over the deck. They tested the former model of the ship that sank. They tested it at the same time, and it showed that it took the water over the sheer. So after this test in this laboratory, then the ship was built from new drawings from this reconstruction, and it was launched in 2012, and it sails very well. It has a maximum speed of 12 knots and a sail of 80 square meters made of wool, hand woven, and is 21.5 meter long. So that's all the reconstructions that we worked with, more or less. But it's like that it will never stop, because when we built the museum harbour at the Viking Ship Museum in Roskilde, 9 ships from Viking Age and Middle Age were found. And one of them was the world's longest Viking warship ever found. It's 37 meter long, making it the world's longest. So maybe this is the one to be reconstructed next time. Yeah, you just have to find a huge crew for it. It will be manned by 80 men. And that's a very beautiful thing about reconstructing and using archaeological ship finds. That is that we do not only know and learn about the ship technology, we also learn about the Viking society and the men that crewed it. So with this picture, I will say good luck to all of you with your maritime projects. I hope you will succeed. Thank you.